Today's podcast is sponsored by Agorapulse. Stay tuned for more details in this episode.
It's a good point because really we talk about this as if we're like losing something. Is this part of our humanity? Is art, what's the nature of art? What's the nature of content? But for the creator, there are creators who create to promote a business and not to directly monetize their content. People like me. Like, oh, Andy, aren't you worried that someone will like take all your stuff and make a digital twin of you and then start giving actually, that sounds great to me. I'm pretty tired. I've written 580 articles. I would love to have a digital twin. If I could clone myself, man, it'd be great. I'm exhausted. Like, how many years? Can I keep doing this forever? Exactly. So no, I think that there's use cases where it's like, that sounds fantastic. Please, I am trying to build a custom GPT that can act like me. It's not working that great yet, but yeah.
Welcome to Digital Marketing Masterclass. Today's guest is Mike Kaput. Mike is a globally recognized marketing AI expert, author, and speaker. In his role as Chief Content Officer at Marketing AI Institute, Mike has helped some of the world's top companies build competitive advantages with AI. In his role as Chief Content Officer at Marketing AI Institute, Mike has helped some of the world's top companies build competitive advantages with AI. He is the co-author of Marketing Artificial Intelligence and the co-host of the Marketing AI Show. Beyond that, he's given dozens of talks on AI's potential in the world of marketing to companies like Financial Times, Vimeo, and Vodafone. Internet, please give a warm welcome to Mike Kaput. All right, Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
This is very exciting. I was trying to say before the show that my team are just massive fans of the podcast and what you and Paul are doing. And then I got to meet you through Andy at Maycon and stuff like that. And it's kind of fun to go full circle before the holidays. So
it really is. Yeah. I mean, and in true AI fashion, they're not slowing up before the holidays. So it's important to keep tabs on everything going on.
Yeah. And so one of the funny things on your podcast, you're like, hey, Paul, you can hear the exhaustion in your guys' voices of like, I've traveled 1 million miles this year, you know what I mean? And you're like, we are going to be taking off until between the 8th and the 15th of next year, unless something big comes out. And like everyone sort of laughs under their breath. Like,
yeah, like nervous laughter.
Exactly. Like something big isn't going to come out. Yeah, awesome. My bet is GPT 4.5. That's my bet. I'm sticking to it. So cool. So as you know, with our show, essentially what we do is that Andy and I, as we run the show, we each pick a topic and then we bring a guest in, and they're going to talk about their topic as well. Usually what happens is that we'll talk for a couple minutes, and then the other two hosts will come in and just kind of elaborate and add some color to it. And so we drew straws before the show, and Andy, you are up.
Sounds good. And just let me restate what Chris just said. Thank you, Mike and Paul and Kathy. You guys are just a tremendous resource for so many of us. It would be sort of impossible for us to keep tabs on it the way you do. So for wrapping it all up for us. And we've got Chris here who's like mega fan. Like, this is the guy who watches everyone right away. Okay, topic is AI. I'm going to share with you a perspective. Mike, I'd love to hear what you think of this. Here's a use case. I get asked a lot about like AI versus SEO, which I think is a weird way to say it. SEO is kind of a marketing activity, and AI is like a name of a category of technology. But what they're sort of saying is like the AI implications within SEO and like Google and SGE and like generative search and like what appears in search results pages. I'm going to pan out and suggest that there's a bigger story here, which is the use of search in general. I'm sure you've thought about this, but a quick use case. Last night, I'm having a cocktail. We have a monthly happy hour. I'm next to this guy. His name's Daniel, close friend. Daniel's Romanian. We're talking about Bucharest. There's that huge presidential palace. When was that built? He takes out his phone, opens a browser, searches Google. What year was the presidential palace built, blah, blah, blah. Scans search results, clicks, lands on web page, accepts cookies, there's a pop-up window, scrolls past text, blocks notifications, didn't feel not sure where, like hit the back button, looked at another one. I take out my phone, I open up my ChatGPT app, I type basically the same prompt as his query, and the answer is 1984. He downloaded probably 4 megabytes of data. He's going to be retargeted for months. You got like accepting cookies and pop-up windows. The mobile experience so noisy. Is it just me, or as human behavior and user trends evolve, will AI begin to reduce the use of search at all, supplanting that activity within an app, maybe reducing the use of browsers? Is the use of browsers going to go down? Is AI a better way to access information, at least get short answers on the internet?
That is a question that has been making me lose sleep, I would say, because I don't see nearly enough people talking about it. And browsers, for sure, I hadn't even really thought too much about the implications there. I think in search, for instance, a tool I'm a big fan of, just a free tool, no affiliation with it, is called Perplexity AI. And it's like the search generative experience in Google. It's like some of the things you can access in Bing and Bard and things like that, where it's conversational search results, but it cites a bunch of really helpful sources, and you can ask really smart follow-up questions, all kind of in the same thread. I don't know in the last few weeks when the last time I defaulted to Google was. Now that I have access to this tool, know that it exists, and that's a lot of the Google types of Google searches I do. Like today in the gym, I was looking up different forms for workouts. I have no idea why it pulled certain YouTube videos or pieces of information or websites. They were all seemingly quite helpful. The ones I clicked through to were to learn a little more about the actual, say, exercise or lift or whatever. At no point did any type of advertising or traditional SEO seem to dictate why I got those results. Now, that's just one small tool. Maybe I'm an outlier here, but if my behavior is already changing that fast and I'm super Googling every day of my life to like create content, understand topics, do our podcast, all this stuff, I have to believe that we're in an almost like a code red situation for traditional search.
I'm in the full, I think all three of us are in that same camp. I mean, I even have different AI chats of choice depending on what medium I want. I mean, sometimes it creeps Andy out, but I use Pi all the time. I use the voice function of ChatGPT. I like to just talk to it. Like I like the verbal one where it keeps talking back and forth with you. And like you said, like when I think of Google, I'm like, it's a harder lift to get a quick answer.
It is. It's heavier. It's slower. It's more noisy. It's less. It's just not a. I mean, I think when we're being honest with ourselves, we're going to look back and say this was an era when the mobile experience, especially, was pretty bad. Not a good era we're living in right now for the mobile experience. And I'm a content marketer. I'm a publisher. I'm an agency owner. We build websites. I'm perfectly aware of the inputs here and my role and the context within it. But if I scroll past some of my recent chats in ChatGPT, how does slime protect slugs? My daughter wanted to know. Fantastic answer. Well, who lived in Europe prior to the Neolithic period? Perfect answer, right? It's a paragraph that just answers that question exactly, right? These are things that I've searched for. Not is search the word? Prompted for. And just gotten okay, some qualifications. I wasn't super concerned about accuracy about slug slime. I'm not looking for anything that's super current, right? I'm not looking for videos. There are, of course, lots and lots of use cases where Google still makes perfect sense. I obviously have no visit website intent. Lots of queries we search for when we're trying to get to a website or we're in strong consideration mode for like a big decision, right? But there are, if 80% of all search queries in Google are information intent queries, there's research for this, and maybe the majority of those are moments where you'd really just try to get the answer and don't even want to see the ads, the video carousel, Even the noise around the featured snippet is just more than you wanted to download in that, to your phone. I think that, everyone talks about, AI as a threat to marketers. I think we have to recognize AI is a threat to big tech, and that the reasons, the moments at which we decide to use Google today, many of those will be moments where we just choose to pop open an app and get a quick answer tomorrow.
And I've got a follow question for you, Mike, on that. Is that let's take that even a little farther. If Google, in theory, if you really think about how Google sort of prioritizes their content, it's always been user-generated content. There's been a symbiotic relationship that I create content, you basically index content and sort it and find it and basically find the best possible answer. Now let's pretend like no one goes to the browser anymore. Why do I create content anymore? And then how do they train on content that's significantly lower because there's no incentive for us as content creators to use that platform anymore? Or do you think that marketers are going to say the new form of SEO is not feeding the browser, it's feeding whatever algorithm or twist on content is feeding, literally going directly to the model itself? Is that the new world?
If we solve it all on this podcast, we should start charging for this, I think. But I think where I've kind of landed so far, and it's still very, very early kind of first draft thinking, this is a big priority for us to figure out in the next few months for our own content strategy and marketing. But I think it's a bit of a few things you mentioned. First, I would guess, there is going to be significant interest in figuring out whatever SEO for AI looks like, if it's even possible. I'm not even sure we'll have enough guidance to be able to surface in conversational agents, for instance. I know Chris Penn, who a lot of people in the marketing world in our circles know well, has talked a bit about this in the sense of building a brand might suddenly become so much more important than it used to be. Not that it's not important, but I think we're going back to almost in some ways old school marketing. PR mentions, podcast appearances, anything that gets you publicity where possibly an LLM or multimodal model would pick up on, hey, there's some signals that this person seems to know what they're talking about. I should probably cite them or mention them. I think that'll be an interesting possible play moving forward. But I could also see there being a realm where a lot of people stop creating content as a result. And perhaps we start training some of these models on what's called synthetic content. Now, the jury is still out on, for sure, if we can have AI generated content, effectively train new systems, but it's not proven wrong that we can't yet. So that could also end up being a way forward where they don't need us to create content anymore.
I'm going to take a shot at how marketers in the future will adapt to AI. If you have a chance to create something, you'll prioritize the places where you create things where there's a transcript of the recording or detailed text around it. In the context also where you get a chance to, even in the introduction for a show like this, to say what you do and how well you do it. People that introduce themselves in ways that it isn't quite so humble and gets transcribed will be ingested by the AI. So for example, I'm Chris Carr. I'm happy to be on this show. Thank you for having me. As if I'm Chris. I'm the,
You're better
I'm the founder.
version.
So I'm gonna create some language now that in a transcription would be ingested by an AI and then later be more likely to return Chris's brand as an answer. I'm the co-founder of Ferrotech. Ferrotech is one of the best-in-class agencies at doing inbound marketing, web development, paid ads, and video production. We've done it for decades. We're experts at this. We've done it for companies around the country, and we're a completely results-focused digital agency. That encapsulated little chunk of language gets ingested, and now there's one more place online, like any press mention, right? Like links used to work in Google. There's one more place online that has that little chunk of language that then the AI, in one small way tries to train the AI. So don't be humble. Look for things that get transcribed. Have your whole pitch get recorded or written many times in many places. That's my best guess.
Interesting.
Yeah, I also, maybe it sounds dumb to say, but I also do think, I mean, not like social media is not important, but I would say personal branding on social media or company branding on social media is probably more important than ever, because some of this goes the other way, where I found myself, now that I have the ability to quickly synthesize all these different sources in conversational results, I start asking, well, what is so-and-so's approach to, I don't know, a workout in the gym or a regimen or a type of marketing, right? So I think asking for people by name is probably something that's always been important, but I don't know how much we've invested in it in the last several years with the focus on, organic results and things like that.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
The rich get richer. That's kind of unfortunate because brands people that already had, a digital footprint, influencer marketing becomes more powerful as it has been getting more powerful and been valuable. Existing brands, big players, companies with a lot of authority, a lot of content, a lot of mentions, a lot of brand recognition. Because then you skip. It's like shopping for my wife for the holidays. I wonder what it costs to get her like a pendant or a thing. I'm going to go straight to this jewelry website that I knew of. Power of brand. So that in that scenario, yes, of course, then you're secure because you're top of mind. And if you're looking for a content strategy that makes you more memorable, I'll give you some AI prompts to come up with topics that are kind of counter narrative or more triggering or thought provoking. But yeah, the job is to be memorable.
Yeah. It's funny because, Andy and I started our agency about the same year. But I've been working on clients' work for 19 years. I started marketing like 3 or 4 years ago after 19 years of just doing. And so if the new currency is your pedigree and backlinks and personal brand, like I have to sprint because I've been making the donuts for 19 years. And it's a shame, but if the tide turns just at the wrong time, there's going to be a lot of really, really smart people that are just basically the technicians that are tinkering that won't be able to compete, not because they're not good, but because their personal brand or their whatever, that could be a big problem, So, yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a disadvantage. One of the remedies sometimes is to just keep niching down into a more of a narrow topic.
Well
to be
said.
very well known for one very specific thing. But no, it's unfortunate, and you watch these mega trends, and you can kind of tell, it's the algorithms continue to reward big players.
I hope you're enjoying today's podcast. Now, please take a moment to hear a word from our sponsor.
This is an amazing podcast on marketing, but what if you're trying to figure out how to actually grow and scale your agency? For struggling agency owners, there aren't as many resources available, and there certainly aren't many places you can turn to benefit from the experiences of other successful agency owners. That's where Social Pulse Podcast Agency Edition comes in. I'm award-winning marketer and partnership leader Mike Alton, and each week I sit down with another agency owner just like you, talking about some of the biggest challenges they've faced and how they overcame them. Find Social Pulse Podcast Agency Edition and subscribe on whatever podcast player you're listening to now.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to switch to mine because I want to give Mike a lot of time.
Yeah, bring us back. Lift us up.
All right. So, okay. Well, ironically, your thesis and my thesis are almost going to land in the same place. So I'm going to turn on Prezi Video. First off, when I was talking about Gemini, literally I do a presentation, Mike. It's called AI Today. It's a lot like your state of AI. But I go to businesses and I basically say, look, this is how the tide's changing. This is where it's at. This is where it's going. This is how you can be prepared. And so ironically, I started this whole journey when Paul was on my show in 2020. And this is pretty much what I do full time for the agency, is I just talk about AI. Anyhow, long story short is that I was telling people before Gemini came out, I was like, this thing could be 5x stronger, 5x stronger than GPT-4. And, it came out, and I wanted to be excited. And, you're looking at certain benchmarks that the benchmarks were, maybe about 5 to 10% better. They weren't comparing it against GPT-4 Turbo. They were basically comparing it against version 4. And a lot of times they were basically talking about how Ultra was going to compare to it. And so you have this really confusing chart of just how things line up. And so one of the things that I was finding, it was like, I'm finding that's a little bit confusing. Is that misleading? But you know what? I was like, the tail's in the tape. So then they showed this.
Here we go. Tell me what you see.
I see you placing a piece of paper on the table. I see a squiggly line.
What about now?
The contour lines are smooth and flowing, with no sharp angles or jagged edges. It looks like a bird to me.
What if I add this?
The bird is swimming in the water. It has a long neck and beak. It is a duck.
Yes.
Okay, so I texted Paul this, and I'm in the camp where Paul was like, dude, you need to relax. But I was in the camp of Bard botched. In my opinion, Bard was GPT-4, GPT 3.5, and then 4 came out. I thought Bard was going to come in like a sledgehammer, and I thought Bard was a massive disappointment. So when I thought Gemini came out, I said, you know what? They're going to crush it. And they said, we're going to push back our launch until Q1 of next year. So I'm like, okay, they're going to get it right. Then all of a sudden, this comes out. And I'm like, I'm looking at these metrics. I'm like, well, it's not 5x better. But then they show this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they figured it out. They figured out a way with zero latency to basically go from video to AI. Like, that's a massive step forward that GPT-4 simply just does not have. You know what I mean? And so I was in this camp, like, I'm like literally dreaming of like, what could you do with this? You know? I mean, like, I was thinking even like, I saw a guy online that put a video game, and he was playing a video game, and he was doing something with an open source model where they had a commentator of the video game, like it was like a WWF event, and it was just literally watching a live video game. And I was like, this is the future, that you put a video in and it's going to understand a video the way a human understands a video. And then it comes out where I'm just like, it comes out that this wasn't exactly true, that they had done a lot of post-production, a lot of magic, that they had literally uploaded still screenshots, and this isn't the product that's promised. And I'm just like, kind of like, Google, like, what is going on here? You know what I mean? So that's issue number one. Now let me show you where I'm going with where I believe video is going. And I know, Mike, I know you guys are really into Runway ML.
Yeah.
But let me show you one of their competitors. This was in your newsletter, though, Mike. And I'd heard about these guys, and I was texting Paul. I was like, have you seen this? Hold on for a second.
I love how passionate you are about this, Chris. You're like, I've been betrayed.
I've been betrayed
by Google. Oh, you got me. Oh, why did I believe you?
I believed
Google,
you.
No.
You did it again. All right, so watch this. This is called Pika Labs. I think it's 1.0. Check this out. So like, what did we just see here? Well, the first thing is you just type something in, and it just basically creates the way it used to create an image with Midjourney. It creates a video, and the quality and the smoothness of this, I actually don't believe that Runway ML has achieved yet. I mean, keep in mind that we're comparing it to a model that's over a year old or half a year old. Then you just start to see just some of the effects that it can do. Like whether it like looks like a commercial, whether it's animated or whatever that is. You type more things out. I mean, this was in Runway ML, but like some of the things that you can do with this are absolutely incredible. But then it can go even farther. Like you can drop an image in. It starts out where the image starts and then just make an image move. You can take an existing video and then just layer on top a different skin. If you want to expand the canvas, I watched The Grinch with my kids, and I was like, this was made like 100 years ago, and the sides are all black. Or I could use AI to just solve that problem right away. And then, it's also just like with Firefly, you can just change things and it's in video. Look at the reflection. It's unbelievable, right? So now we go full circle and I say, well, I'm mad at Gemini, but then I saw this. This was very interesting. They're calling it bespoke UI. And so here's what you're doing is that you're typing in a normal prompt the way we do in GPT-4, but now it's literally creating a user interface. And so the $1 million question for me is the same thing that you had, Andy, is like, do we need a browser anymore when literally the UI can be created in the AI as well? It's just really crazy about how all these things are sort of all combining all at the same time. And you just start to think, we can't live in a world where it's just text. Okay, now we can generate an image. Now we can generate a video. Now we can generate a user interface. It's like if you dream it, not only can you see it, like it's literally in an interface that's controllable and digestible. And so as a person who makes 30% of my income comes from web development, that scares me. Content marketing, that scares me. Like all of this stuff, it scares me and it's an opportunity. But it does make me think that like when these college grads that I speak at, you and I both speak at colleges all the time, I'm like, the world you're doing right now as a freshman will look so radically different by the time you graduate. It's almost like maybe just quit, just like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, like whatever you're learning is so far behind the way the world will be. It's crazy.
It's pretty stunning how quickly some of these move. I mean, to your point, and Gemini could be its whole, we could probably have an entire event around the gaffe with that video and things like that. But I think sometimes though, I understand why people focus so much on the fact that video was edited, but even just zooming out, what you put it perfectly, who cares honestly if the video was edited a bit? Obviously that's not representing realistic capabilities, but we're so close to those types of capabilities already. Whatever model or tool you want to show, how quickly this is moving, that's what we kind of encourage people to really keep their eye on the ball in that sense of don't get too caught in the weeds of which model is slightly better, what did Google do wrong or right or ugly, whatever. Like focus on the fact that these tools are getting so good so quickly. What does that mean for your business, your career, and your personal life, honestly?
Mike, this is just how I'm wired, Mike. So there's a Louis C.K. joke, and he says, I was getting on an airplane, and they announced, hey, there's going to be internet on this airplane. And they got up to 29,000 feet, and the internet didn't work. And the guy next to him was like, this is bull crap. He's like, you knew about it for 5 seconds, and now your heart's broken. We're like, I knew Gemini for like 5 seconds. It wasn't exactly the way they dreamed. And I'm like, why could you do it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that's on them for sure. They should anticipate. That was a pretty hyped up on their part. So,
yeah.
That's society, and it's a really important point. It's like, how fast does a luxury become a necessity? This is like, I think it's an Andrew Carnegie quote from like 100 years ago. Like, the job of capitalism is to turn luxuries into necessities. Your expectations move very quickly as individuals, personally, psychologically, each of us. Our expectations change very quickly. So, you want that answer now. You want it to be easy. You want that thing, of course. I want my tools to be able to expand the frame and draw the missing pixels for the, change the aspect ratio of any video. What? 2 weeks ago, that was magic to you. And now you demand that of all your tools. So it's not only is the technology advancing, but I think it's worth noting just how fast society changes to adapt to these things and how fast user expectations change. Imagine being a software company without a pipeline for these features. You're in trouble.
Yeah, and as marketers, I mean, how many years have we been talking about how consumer expectations have changed to be very, expecting very seamless, rapid experiences like they get with leading consumer brands. And it's like that just got kicked up 10x.
That's right.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. It's funny because I'm reading, I just finished a book. You might have read this, Mike, The Coming Wave, the Mustafa Suleyman.
It's on my list. Yeah, that's a big one.
And he jokes around. He's like, AI is really innovative. And then when people get used to it very quickly, and then it's just software. You know what I mean? Like, meaning like you get it, it's a luxury, and then it becomes this thing, and then it's like when it doesn't work just right, you're like, you just don't understand. Like, this is like the miracle of flight, but now you're over it. So
Yeah, there's no going back. Once these really get dialed in, and some of these video, image, text generation capabilities, dynamic UXs on the fly, essentially personalized internet in your hand, like there's no going back.
yeah, I have a proposal for a client. They're an insurance company. I have an AI like development company that works with me, and we're gonna literally have their quote. They take 2 other quotes. Every time you have an insurance plan, these things are these briefs that have been lawyered up like forever. Every time they had to do this manually, they would have to compare this, and it would take 5 hours to compare plans. And if you have 2 other plans, it could take 10 hours. We're building a system where you just plop the documents in, the AI does the comparison, says these are the things you want to say, these are the things you don't want to say, and if you want to have any questions, there's another tab where you can just talk to the documents with natural language. Boom. But my thing is that we've been working on this, and then now like the client is kind of like, wants this one feature. I was like, well, that's really hard. He's like, oh, come on. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? I was like, think what I just said.
That's funny.
Anyhow.
Yeah, I think the switch goes from, we all had to write and publish, and people had to discover and consume. And then it changed to, we had this giant, amazing tool to write and publish. And the way that visitors discover and consume also changes. So it kind of amps up all those processes. But keep going with that thinking, and you end up in a world where the content is created on demand, right? Like it's almost like some of the things that I ask AI to, like how to slime protect slugs. It's basically asking AI to write a blog post for me and give me the answer like in 6 paragraphs, a bullet list. So it's like on demand content. So there might be a day when it's like, hey, you want to watch a show? Sure. Look, how about a murder mystery, kind of a thriller, maybe a historic fiction thing? I want to make me a movie with some twist surprise endings in ancient Rome with a strong female protagonist and a funky soundtrack. Boom, there's your movie. You're going to watch that movie and you're going to love it.
Yep. And it's like, I want Catherine Zeta-Jones, who's 60 years old, and Tom Holland, and I want them to be the same age. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's like crazy.
Yep.
We got to put a timestamp in that prediction, because I feel like we could look back a few years from now. Be
I
like,
know.
wow, yeah, that's possible.
Yeah, on-demand blog post with my slime slug thing. So it's December 14th, 2023, and we just predicted that we will live in a world where there will be on-demand, entertaining, high-production value content, where you're going to pick actors from alive in different eras, alive or dead, and they're going to have a screenplay. But let me ask you guys, is it going to be good? Is it going to be as good? Are you going to like it as much? Or is there a relationship between the creator and the consumer through the medium? Are you going to kind of be less interested in it because you'll know that there was no drama around the creation of it? It wasn't really made by anyone you care about. Does that matter?
I watched Indiana Jones, and Harrison Ford was 35 years old for 40 minutes, and my brain did not care.
That's a good example. I was similarly shocked and impressed by that part of that movie.
Yeah, crazy.
Well,
But think about Pika Labs, right? So I show you Pika Labs. I think of an idea, and it goes for 18 seconds or 20 seconds. The last frame of that, already in Pika Labs, I could take the last frame of that and go 18 seconds farther from the last frame. Now I have 36 seconds. In theory, Andy, if we had enough time and enough ideas, you and I could make that movie right now. I'm not saying, you know what I mean? That's a very weird example, but I'm not stretching the truth of how, imagine a multi-million-dollar production company.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see, because I feel like there is still going to be, whether it's as mainstream as it is today, there's still going to be some segment where there's going to be a whole category of films that are like, hey, these are human only created or something, right? Where it'll become some type of almost maybe bespoke or sort of artisan thing I'm not saying that's where it'll go, but I could see even in the most optimistic future of this technology where it can just make these movies like this easily, I would still see certain human created stuff having some pull with people. But it'll be interesting to see, because I don't know, part of me wants to have a strong opinion that, we'll always love like powerful human-driven stories, but then honestly, you could probably just lie to me and say a human wrote it, and if I was like, "Oh, it moved me to tears," and then tell me later, it was a machine that did it. So I don't know.
Yeah. I watched Post Malone on the Joe Rogan show, and he said he was already talking about licensing people that they showed him a song, and I showed this in my presentation, my AI presentation. So the song it sounded just like him, a song he never wrote. But then I tell this story about, this is Amanda, and she's in nursing school. She doesn't think she's going to graduate. She just broke up with her boyfriend, and she just bought a puppy. So in the future, when Amanda listens to Post Malone, he's going to be singing songs about boyfriends, colleges, and puppies. Because he said, yes, I will definitely take checks for songs I never wrote. If you want to take my likeness and multiply it in a million ways, he's like, of course I'll take that. I will give you the premium content that comes right from my heart. But if you want to take my voice, my likeness, and my things like that and create it right to your echo chamber, I'll get paid for that, sure. That's what he said. I was like, wow.
I think it's a good point, because really we talk about this as if we're like losing something. Is this part of our humanity? Is art, what's the nature of art? What's the nature of content? But for the creator, there are creators who create to promote a business and not to directly monetize their content. People like me. Like, oh, Andy, aren't you worried that someone will like take all your stuff and make a digital twin of you and then start giving, like, actually, that sounds great to me. I'm pretty tired. I've written 580 articles. I would love to have a digital twin. If I could clone myself, man, it'd be great. I'm exhausted. Like, how many years? Can I keep doing this forever? Exactly. So no, I think that there's use cases where it's like, that sounds fantastic. Please, I am trying to build a custom GPT that can act like me. It's not working that great yet, but yeah. But I'm not someone who's trying to make money directly from my content. I produce content for kind of indirect benefits to my business.
I hope you're enjoying today's podcast. Now, please take a moment to hear a word from our sponsor.
Listen, if you're interested in learning about new tools and exciting solutions in marketing technology, there's a new podcast out just for you, The MarTech Show, featuring agency owner and technology futurist Robin Diamond alongside myself, award-winning marketer and partnership leader Mike Alton. Each week, we'll introduce you to a fascinating MarTech tool and do a deep dive into the problems it solves. They also dish on what's shiny and new in the industry so you can stay informed on the developments that matter to you. Find the MarTech Show and subscribe on whatever podcast player you're listening on now.
All right, Mike, you are up. What's your topic?
So a topic I've been thinking more and more about is, how is AI going to potentially impact marketing jobs, marketing careers, specifically in 2024? Now, I'll preface this by saying I have no special vision into what the future will be here. I'm not going to tell you some big crazy prediction will happen, but I do think it's something worth thinking about in a, non-scary, but, just very sober kind of way, looking at the capabilities of some of these tools and starting to plan in your own career, your own business, and start thinking about what that means for kind of human capital within companies. So I want to start off by teeing this up with just a few quick stats, because midway through this past year in 2023, we did our State of Marketing AI report. And we do this every year. It's like the fourth year we've done it. We had about 900 plus marketers and business leaders answer a bunch of questions about AI usage, AI understanding, etc. And some important data points jumped out at me as part of this that seemed to be kind of starting to tell an interesting story about cautiously optimistic AI usage and adoption, but also that we might want to start thinking about how this stuff is going to impact jobs. So first up, we actually had this year, 64% of marketers said that AI is either very important or critically important to their marketing success over the next 12 months. And that was a huge jump from the previous year where like 51% or so said the same thing. 77% of marketers that we surveyed said that reducing the time spent on repetitive tasks was the top outcome they want to achieve with AI. And when we actually segmented out people in the C-suite and their answers, that was also kind of the top outcome. And for our audience, this isn't surprising, but 98% of them said that they're already using AI in some way. Now, that could just be like experimenting. That doesn't necessarily mean they're using it for every single thing. And most of them would say they're still beginners and are positive about the technology. Now, here's though where warning lights started to kind of flash for me. So first, 78% of respondents, and this happens almost uniformly at this percentage every single year, said that their employers have no internal AI-focused education or training. So they're essentially kind of freelancing this, figuring it out on their own, which, as we've all seen, is not easy to do always. And despite all the widespread AI usage, when we asked, how do you see AI affecting marketing jobs in just the next 3 years, 40% of them said they thought more jobs would be eliminated over this time than would be created due to AI. Now, about 36% said more jobs would be created rather than destroyed. But interestingly, those who were CEOs or presidents were way more likely than like any other role to think that more jobs would be eliminated due to AI. So I'm going to pause there and kind of just contextualize this and say, really what we're kind of seeing is people are very excited, for the most part, to be adopting and experimenting with the technology. That's great. This technology is primarily being used to try to save time, to automate or augment repetitive work. But people are starting to kind of, in my mind, connect the dots that, okay, what happens when we start to actually save a bunch of time and dramatically increase productivity? Now, that's the piece that I kind of want to pause on and get your guys' thoughts on, because in my mind, everyone becoming 5, 10x more productive is fantastic. That will have a huge positive impact on businesses, on the economy. Ideally, 5 to 10x more of our work is stuff we actually like doing versus mundane stuff we don't want to do. But that also comes with a flip side. Just because we can do 5x more doesn't mean there's 5 times the amount of demand or work to be done. And that inherently becomes a math problem that's unkind, in my mind, to workers. Am I wrong on that? I mean, if there is increasing demand because we are saving so much time and money with AI, awesome. Businesses will boom, entire new companies and markets will be created. But if there's a cap on what someone's business can do in a given year, that just seems to me to say less people.
Okay.
You first, Andy.
This is historical megatrends and sociology and of the very big picture in the history of post-industrial revolution capitalism. It is repeating common normal trend. This has always happened. I think it feels different because the people who are paying attention to it and feel threatened by it are actually, in this case, the elite white collar knowledge workers. Like lawyers are worried about it. So, when a trend comes along, it's like, oh, containerization destroyed longshoremen and dock workers. Yeah, they didn't have as big a voice as the knowledge workers in today's economy. So I think it's becoming a kind of, but look back at history. This has always been true. This has happened every time. This is just the cycle. I think it creates a lot of the anxiety around the general topic, causes ripples through the political system as people feel left behind generally. And that's a sociological thing. It's not a marketing thing per se, but it just creates a tone of anxiety across the political spectrum. And there are groups of people that just feel like, what happened to us? And that's disenfranchising people is risky in the long run. But overall, I don't know about 5x or 10x. I think that the adoption rate might be slower, and you're looking at more like 20% and 50%, which is still massive. I think it's still massive. But yes, it is. This will be a change, and there will be moments when AI wipes out huge swaths of groups, like What happens when long haul truckers are just replaced by self-driving trucks? What happens when all the call center workers are just replaced by AI? Like, these are moments when, millions in one stroke can be displaced or disrupted. Translators. Yeah, there's lots of. We could make the list, or I think Boston Consulting Group has like there's lists, right?
Yeah.
So, in the end, we live in a dynamic. This is a message for individuals and each of you listening. We live in a dynamic time. Keep an open mind. Have a growth mindset. Be flexible. Invest in yourself. Stay nimble. Grow your relationships. Keep networking. Watch the trends. Try new tools. Invest in yourself. Go. Stay in school. Study like it's finals week. Even if you're not in school, keep researching. That's what I do because I'm threatened, right? I got to stay in front of this. I'm not necessarily a proponent of the technology. Honestly, I'm just trying to stay relevant and current. So it's a moment when each of us has to be responsible for our future, but it's not unlike any other moment in the last 250 years.
I have a lot to say, and ironically, Mike, so much of the stuff I'm gonna spit back at you guys is I learned from you, Macon, and your podcast and things like that. And so let me try to just do a couple of them right off the bat. Like, I teach AI to businesses, and they ask me, well, you must be a big fan. I'm like, honestly, I would like to have a faster horse, like that whole Henry Ford expression. This is too fast for me. This makes me uncomfortable. But what I would say is that I believe, if I was to guess, I think that there's going to be this big cutting of jobs, and then opportunities you're going to have. And so you're going to have this like short-term chasm of job loss before job ideation and creation and things like that. And I'm scared for what happens in that little gap period. I really am, because I've already seen so many companies almost be in a position where they're jumping the gun. And one of the things I would say here, and this is where I did learn from Macon, and I don't remember who the speaker was, but I use her slides quite a bit. I'm a content marketer, and I make these promises, and I say, look, we create content, and it has really great ideation. We're going to follow up with really great research. Then we're going to compose, and then we're going to edit, and then we're going to have a whole content promotion strategy. And they're like, great. And then I go back to my editorial calendar, my team, and we really look at our time, and like, we spend so much of our time writing. Well, what happens when AI comes in and our writing time goes way down? Now, I could say, I'm going to keep the money, efficiency, that's great, less people, keep the efficiency. But if we all have those tools, I'm using this time, and this is literally what I'm coaching my team on, is in this short-term time of efficiency where the client isn't asking for, I need a reduction in my bill because I know it's easier to write, I'm saying pivot that time to the weaker parts of our game now, because it'll be too late later. So there's going to be more consequential things to do in ideation, in research, in editing, in content promotion that might be the only thing we can stand on later on when writing is all commoditized. So I'm like, use this time wisely now. But the other thing is I dream really big dreams of my clients, and I'm like, we can do all this stuff, customized video, I can reach all this stuff. And they're like, that's so great. But they're like, well, I don't even have a newsletter. I don't even blog consistently. I don't even know who my buyer personas are. Stuff like that. I'm like, well, if AI does the foundational things for us bigger, stronger, and faster, good marketers will actually get to work and do the real stuff. Like Andy and I joke about this comment all the time. We're like, now marketers are doing marketing work for real this time. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So great marketers, I think, are going to thrive. And I think marketers who were saying SEO is all about finding keywords that have low competition and just kind of just filling that void in that blue ocean. I'm like, I think that blue ocean just got real small. And so when I think about jobs and I think of all that stuff, like I'm coaching in my mind, myself and others, use this time effectively now. Before you cut people, pivot them to the weaker parts of your game, because later on you'll wish you had hands on deck to work on your weaknesses, because it's coming.
Yeah, I think I love the point about reallocating kind of human capital and, creativity. I think personally that's what produces the best results. I hope people are forward thinking enough to do that instead of that knee-jerk reaction, right? Like you mentioned. I also do joke that I have not yet met a marketer that has too little to do. Like we are all, 90% of the time, we're not even doing the job we were hired to do. So that could be the argument against possible disruption in the short term is like, hey,
Yep.
maybe we'll actually all get to do what's in our job description instead of
Yep.
being a professional firefighter and whatever else we do in a given day.
When I sell our products and services, there's so many marketing companies out there that I don't really worry about competition, but let's pretend like I do in this case. I'm usually doing hand-to-hand combat of like, my agency is going to be better than this other agency. But the one I don't usually feel is Marketing Mary. That's like the internal resource that can do those things. Because I'm like, you don't have the time, expertise, or resources to do all that stuff. One of the things I do think is that companies Marketing Mary just got upscaled. And so now Marketing Mary is a little bit more of my competition. She's a little bit more of my threat, where I used to only just worry about other agencies.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's a skills leveler. It brings up the people who are lower skilled to higher levels. But to do that, that's partly what I was thinking. To do that, you really have to be pretty good at prompting. The people who write these really high-powered prompts are people that have a deep subject matter expertise to know what to train, how to train the AI, or how to write a prompt that returns those responses. If I gave you examples of my most effective prompts, you'd be like, wow, that's a prompt? Like, yep, it is. I'm telling it all the success criteria of the thing that I'm trying to create, or I'm giving it lots of uploaded data to have it do this analysis. So in my experience, this is kind of maybe an unexpected observation. AI has added hundreds of hours to my job. I have worked way more this year than in a normal year, partly because I'm disrupted, but I have to do lots of research, lots of experimentation, trying things again and again, right? Shifting my content strategy, talking about these new things, trying new methods. It has not been a net time saver for me at all. It has added hundreds of hours to my job this year. Now, I've made this upside of that. I know I'm investing this time, but if you're doing it right, you're working hard. You're working hard at this. You're not abdicating. You're not offloading your stuff to a robot. You're training you're giving it 10x the training data you thought it needed at first. You're writing these very detailed prompts and improving them, iterating on them again and again and again before you know that you can trust your team to use them. It's a ton of work.
Just the news, and you're going to probably, Mike, be like, just keeping up with the news is a 30-hour-a-week job.
Yeah.
I can't even begin. I don't know how you guys do that.
I come into you and I come on like a spaz, Andy. I was like, they can do this, they can do this, they can do this. You're like, dude, calm down.
I don't even try. I can't follow all that news.
Yeah. But Mike,
Yeah.
I mean, you're one of 5 AI podcasts that I listen to. You're my favorite. Oh, but I'm like, serious, like just keeping up with the news is crazy. Like you have a newsletter because you don't have enough time to go through all of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That kind of dovetails, I don't want to be so, down in the dumps about getting people afraid of disruption and things. I actually think that there are some interesting opportunities that arise from this in the short term. And so I kind of, also came up with, just thinking about this before the show, some ways that I think like people could create massive value in their careers in 2024 with AI, that I'm just going to throw at you guys and see what you think of them. The first one is kind of finding people you can listen to who can help you curate this stuff, because if you try to do it on your own, you may as well just quit. Like it's really, really hard. So finding some of those trusted voices is really helpful, but that actually dovetails into like, I would say to anyone listening, a really obvious opportunity to start that's easier than you think is being, for lack of a better phrase, the AI literacy champion within your company or your organization. That doesn't mean you have to know every single thing about AI. It just means that you are the person people know can perhaps help or bounce ideas off of or teach about what's coming. So following the developments week in, week out, however you're able, is a really good way to do that. I mean, you do have to invest, to Andy's point, a ton of time and energy into getting ahead on some of this stuff, but you don't have to be as far ahead as you think within any given company, I think, to be a leader in that space. So that's kind of a big one that I'm seeing being an obvious opportunity for people. Like, just raise your hand loudly and often within your organization to be saying, hey, I realize we're all trying to figure this out. I'd like to help.
Yeah, I think the leadership void is huge. And that's what I've been, that was my investment, is to to learn something so I can teach it. But there are, if anytime a category is created, that's opportunity. And anyone that decides to not wait, but to quickly try to upskill themselves can capture that opportunity. Look at TikTok. A bunch of new people have massive audiences, people you never heard of before. This weird example, but you guys get it.
But where I think you come in, Andy, and this is one of the concerns that I have with so many people jumping into AI, is that AI minus experimentation is a very poor form of teaching AI. And what I mean by that is, like, you look at Ethan Mollick, you look at some of the things that you're doing, you think all the stuff like that, like, it's one of these things that it's one thing to know it, but you do need time to actually get your hands dirty and say, this is what it is and this is what it's not. Because we just talked about Google today. Like, if you just preached it like the way it's been advertised to you, you're gonna be like, no, it doesn't do video to AI, but it looks like it does.
It's a really good point. That's another one of the things that I had as like a big area to create massive value in your own career is, and I say this as someone that co-hosts a podcast, that creates a lot of content, that's co-authored a book, that those things can only get you so far. Like, you have to be using this stuff. I would even argue today, you don't even have to be the best in the world with these tools. Just show me that you're able to do things with them. That's actually like your resume in AI, I would say, is show me that you were able to create a custom GPT to do something simple in marketing that saved you an hour or did something interesting. I mean, that to me is so important, because I think people, very rightly so, I understand why, you get analysis paralysis. You're like, well, I don't know all the latest models. I don't know all the tools. This is really overwhelming. And it is. I mean, it's really, really hard. But stop drinking from the fire hose for a week and just go fire something up. It's still shocking to me how many marketers have not even tried or know there's a difference between the paid version of ChatGPT and the free version.
So true.
It's really shocking to me. I mean, it
common.
brings me back down to earth a few times when I'm like,
Yep.
A lot of people, rightly so, are saying, hey, you've got to move fast. The world is moving fast. You're getting left behind. But then I'm like, well, you also realize there's like 90% of people out there that haven't even shelled out $20 for this.
Seriously. and I bet they've hardly used ChatGPT 3.5. If you took, this would be impossible to know, but what is the average number of prompts that marketers have used in their entire careers? Mm-hmm. Average across all marketers? Probably less than 100.
Yeah. And the number one is, write me a rap song about.
Yeah, it was a poem. Right. They did 2 or 3 poems. And then they asked for like 6 blog articles, and then they took 2 months off.
Yeah.
Or asked it for hyper specific information that it hadn't been trained on. They're like, oh, this thing sucks.
This
it doesn't
thing
work.
sucks. Yeah. Well, I mean, we had our summit. Andy spoke at our summit. Our summit is a retreat. And I was telling my team, like, keep in mind, I'm going to pay for your ChatGPT thing, but like, guys, this thing's been around for a year. You've seen all this stuff. I'm like, raise your hand if you have the pro version, and only like 30% of the room had it. And I'm like, all of you guys are on literally the iPhone 8, and you're like, that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's $20. It's $20, and it just opens up.
Yeah.
It's an iceberg. Like, you see the tip of the iceberg. I promise you, there's so much below the surface. It's $20. Now, I went on and paid for it, but I'm shocked at people that have used it and thought, the free version's good enough. I'm like, if there was a free version plus 2 or enterprise or even the API model, like, I'm like, what more can they do? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, oh my gosh. This is amazing. This can keep going.
It's the price of a fancy
by
cocktail.
People that can.
Yeah, it's an absurd place to save $20. I'm sorry. That's a terrible idea to save $20 on this.
It's a peach Bellini.
Do I want a peach Bellini with a nice tip, or the most powerful technology humanity's ever devised? The cocktail looks pretty good.
Exactly.
I think another kind of related point there is that it's just amazing how few people have experimented fully with prompting either. I mean, you really have to just build almost a relationship with these machines like they are your coworker. And that's the way to start treating them, I think, as you explore further.
Yeah, guys, this has been awesome. I'm mad that we have a hard stop. It's like right before Christmas. I'm like, let's just keep going. No, but really, Mike. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. I think what you guys are doing and what you guys are bringing with your podcast, with Maycom, with the training, I think it's one of the best resources for marketers like in the world right now. I think you're in pole position, and you guys are doing amazing things. So, I think on behalf of myself and Andy, just keep doing what you're doing. It's amazing. And so we're really grateful that you'd be on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Big love to you and Paul and Kathy and everyone at the Marketing AI Institute. Everyone who's listening, if you're not yet following them, what are you doing? And yeah, happy holidays to everyone. And this was a huge pleasure. Chris, thanks for pulling us all together.
You got it. Like, subscribe, do all that stuff. We'll see you next time.